Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 110th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm great today, Cameron. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just made a really big fantasy football trade. I don't know if it's time for my team to tank, although
You had a nice win. You had a nice win last week.
Yeah, so that's all I'll say about that, because nobody wants to hear anything about that. We know that from all the jokes that are always made about that very thing. But that's what I spent most of my day doing, was just, working those
working the phone
scenarios.
lines.
Yeah, calling up the other GMs.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make deals.
Well, I was trying to get a little trade action going, and you got the deal done with the same person I was trying to make a trade with. So
It's not to lose.
I'm not real happy with you right now. So
We'll see if we can get through it for this episode.
remain civil.
Kyle, we had a game against Tennessee. We are going to preview a matchup with LSU. We do have a few news items first. This first one is basketball related. Well, really all NCAA winter sports related. Supposedly there was going to be a vote today to decide on extending eligibility for NCAA winter sport athletes in the same way they did fall athletes, namely football. We couldn't find, as of recording right now, we couldn't find anything about a vote actually happening, but it was supposed to happen today, according to reports yesterday. That kind of blows my mind, honestly.
I mean, I don't really have any hot takes for you. I mean, at this point, it's like I don't even know what to think of it. I guess it's good for anybody that was affected by it, but it's going to really, again, like football, it's going to backlog all the scholarships. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know how it is for the high schoolers coming in.
Yeah.
Just a cluster.
So bizarre. Yeah, it just throws everything up in the air.
Yeah.
Like, you literally just can't plan out for more than a year now. You can't plan out 1 year in advance with regards to scholarships.
Yeah.
Because you just have no idea what's going to happen.
What if your whole team wants to come back?
I mean, there are times where a player does want to come back to a program, and they are guided into transferring to another school. So perhaps that would be on the table in that situation. But yeah, I mean, that'd be such a weird spot to be in as a coach. If you're figuring out your roster, I mean,
and it's not like you can ask for them to tell you now either. So you're gonna have to make that decision. And it's gonna be a quick turnaround.
So in football, you may not know this, but are there scholarship limits just being adjusted according to, like, let's say you have 10 players that stay for another year of eligibility. Are you just basically given 10 free scholarships so that you don't have to pull them from freshmen?
I have no idea.
That seems like it would be the only way to make that close to acceptable.
Yeah, to make it actually helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we're yet to find out how they're handling that. So that'll be nice to get some clarity on at some point if that ever does happen.
Yeah, I want to only think about that when one of these news stories comes up, because when I try to think about it in the midst of talking about a game or something, the one that always comes to mind now is Larry Roundtree could come back for another season and destroy all of Mizzou's running back records.
I've thought about that both games so far. I'm
that
was a nice run for Roundtree. He's going to destroy the records.
But we do think he has a chance to go to the NFL. So
that might be a little bit different.
Yeah. If I've said this before, but I want him to go to the NFL because I like Mizzou players going to the NFL, but also I don't want him to mess up the record books by staying another year.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's in total agreement with you on that. Preserve the record books.
I mean, it's
a big deal.
All right, moving on. Montre Edwards is transferring.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Again, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, clearly you would think there would be a good opportunity for playing time for a young player. A young player should be able to watch what's happening on the field and say, hey, I'm not far off from an opportunity to play. I don't know. And he's a guy that kind of went back and forth in his recruitment too. He committed, then he decommitted very quickly, and then he recommitted later. So, I obviously don't know Montre Edwards whatsoever, but he seems to maybe be a little indecisive, not know exactly what he wants. But wherever he does end up, I wish him the best.
I agree. Last news item I have is the upcoming LSU game. Had a little location shuffle. It's going to be played in Columbia, Missouri. We're going to obviously preview that game here in a little bit, but just your thoughts on our quick decision. Probably the right one, almost definitely the right one to have that game in Missouri instead of Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big deal, and I don't know if it's just because of the craziness of the year that we're already in, where things seem so much less
stakes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and just like for sure. And I feel like it was easier to move that game just because I feel like more people are in limbo maybe more than a normal year. I'm not really describing my thoughts very well here, but
there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding college football. So what's moving it to Missouri? With everything else that's being weird this year.
Yeah, they made the decision very quickly, and it seemed to go pretty easily.
It was like refreshingly easy to just be like, yep, this is a good idea. We're going to do this. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Right. And I'm not sure that that would have happened in a normal year. But
definitely not.
Regardless, so now it's an 11 a.m. game. I'm not sure if they've announced like a television spot for that yet, but
yeah, there's like not a spot for it, basically.
Yeah.
So ESPN's going to have to work their magic and create another alternate channel for it.
I think I did see maybe a few minutes before we started recording that the ESPN2 slot, the game that was supposed to be there, might be postponed because of weather. So there's a pretty good chance they might be on the ESPN2 slot, but who knows?
It's all the same to me. I watch it on the app.
Yeah.
So. All right. So unless you have any other last minute news, let's dive into this Tennessee game as much as we can stand it. Where to begin? Missouri lost to Tennessee, 35-12. And Missouri's now 0-2. Tennessee now 2-0. I suppose the best place to start, in my opinion, is with that opening drive for the Tennessee offense. It was kind of demoralizing to watch as a fan. I've got some notes on it, Kyle.
Okay, let's hear them.
So they were in a 3rd and 10 situation, and Missouri stopped them short. So it was 4th and 1. And they just said, well, we'll just convert that really easily. Another 3rd and 7, resulting in a long completion. Move the chains again. Then down towards the goal line, it was 3rd and 4. Then 4th and 1. And they punched it in with one of their running backs. And it just seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like Missouri's defense was doing everything they needed to do right up until Tennessee just kind of had their way with them.
Yeah.
I mean, those 3 plays, the 2 4th down conversions and the big completion on 3rd and 7, those 3 plays made the drive for Tennessee. And outside of that, Missouri looked really, really good.
Yeah. The good thing was Missouri was better on 3rd down as a defense this game than they were against Alabama. The problem is I think Tennessee was 4 for 4 or something like that. They were 100% on 4th down. And
they kept getting those just like almost no-brainer situations to go for it.
Exactly. There was no point where they did something super risky to go for it on 4th down. It was like a 4th and 1 in the spot on the field where you'd think it would make sense to go for it on 4th.
It was always a situation where the last thing I wanted them to do was go for it.
Exactly, yeah. You were always thinking, like, please just kick a field goal, please just punt or something. But, no, they were really good on 4th down. And, Cam, I think this game confirmed to us our fears that Missouri is probably going to have the worst. They're going to be the underdog in the trenches pretty much every game they play this year, outside of, like, Vanderbilt maybe.
Yeah.
The defensive line did not do anything to stop Tennessee, and Tennessee's O-line is really good. They're huge. They've got some NFL dudes up there for sure, but man, Missouri's D-line did not look interested in stopping the run whatsoever and didn't really get a pass rush.
They will look better in that regard in the future, like you mentioned, and we talked about it in the preview. Tennessee's offensive line probably second maybe in the SEC behind Alabama. So, seeing the best two offensive lines back-to-back to open the season, you got to think it's only up from here for the defensive line from Missouri. Yeah, they're just – obviously they miss Jordan Elliott, but any team would. Missouri misses anybody that can even come close to performing like Jordan Elliott even 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And they just don't really get a push on the interior, and they don't pressure the quarterback from the end.
Yeah.
And that's really all that you're supposed to do as a defensive line.
Hey, pretty much. Yeah. They don't do those things very well, do they?
Yeah.
And
they have flashes every once in a while.
Yeah.
But just when you're in offense and you're just consistently getting that push for your running game, and Tennessee has two pretty good running backs, they just took advantage of it.
JG was looking like Peyton Manning at the beginning of that game, too.
Okay, so another 2 for 2, two good offensive lines, another 2 for 2, just the opposing quarterback just dropping balls right into the hands of receivers, and then also receivers just making incredible plays.
Yeah, it really felt like the receivers caught everything, and JG was he was throwing some beautiful balls, and I was just like, man, this is really demoralizing to watch. Yeah. Because you watch, and we'll get to Bazelak in a minute, and I think that we're excited about his future, but it felt like, oh my gosh, like it's so difficult for us to do anything on offense. Like to complete a pass is like celebrate that, because it's like we make it look so difficult. Yeah. And other teams are just like tossing beautiful passes, and the receivers make tough catches. So it was frustrating.
Garantano does have a lot of experience playing college football against SEC defenses, and maybe he hasn't always looked great or even good sometimes. So if he's putting together a season here, then Tennessee fans would say, well, it's about time. They're not thinking that he's Peyton Manning, but
he probably doesn't get compared to Peyton Manning very often.
Probably not. Maybe only by us lowly Mizzou fans.
Yes, us emotional Mizzou fans.
Exactly. It just seemed like every time Tennessee needed that play, they had it. And it helps when you're coaching. It seemed like the coaching staff was just on the same page. Like, we're just going to be ultra aggressive. Like, there was another 4th and 1 that they got later in the game, and they were airing it out. They were never just like kind of giving up on a drive. They were never just running the ball on a 4th and more than 5 to, just kind of be resigned to just punting the ball back to Missouri. They were always trying to drive down the field.
Attack mode.
Yes. And
they were creative with the play calling too. They really mixed it up and didn't get too stagnant with running too much or whatever. They definitely kept Missouri guessing on how to cover.
So let's talk about the Missouri offense, because that's probably one of the things that everybody wants to hear. Sean Robinson started this game. He did not look good. Connor Bazelak came in for his normal second quarter, third drive of the game. Here you go, see what you can do. And then he played the rest of the game. Sean Robinson didn't take another snap. Tell me your thoughts just on that decision, first of all, after Robinson had 2 lackluster, would be an understatement, drives, and Bazelak didn't do anything too incredible, but then they were just like, okay, here you go, you got the rest of this game, show us what you got.
A fault of mine might be almost that I'm too patient with situations like that. I'm not usually the person that's like pining for the backup quarterback, and like the starter makes one mistake and I'm like, get him out of there. But in this situation, I was like, please get him out of there, because nothing is going right. And you know what? I think that the play calling may have changed too when Bazelak got in there, but and maybe that says even more that they didn't trust Robinson to go in there and throw the ball. And honestly, when I watch highlights of Robinson at TCU, I felt like he had a pretty good arm. I'm like, why is he all of a sudden trying to be, or are they trying to use him like Lamar Jackson,
right,
when he clearly has the ability to throw?
Okay, so that's a huge thing that I wanted to talk about with you, because that seemed so obvious when Bazelak came in for that first series, that it was just like a completely different offense all of a sudden, and not because Bazelak was executing the same plays that Robinson couldn't. It was like, we have a different game plan now with this quarterback. And I had the same exact thought, like, Robinson's not a running back. Like, he's not a Wildcat exclusive quarterback that you only run options with. Like, that's not what he was billed as. That's not what he was coming out of high school. That's obviously not what he was at TCU. So where's the disconnect between what's going on? What's the difference in the coaching staff's mind between the play calling for Bazelak and the play calling for Robinson? And obviously, most of the time we're going to give the play callers the benefit of the doubt, and they're the ones watching these guys in practice. I guess there's something there with Robinson where they just are not comfortable with him throwing the ball at all, because like, his attempts were right around the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, they were even worse than it was against Alabama. That was a concern for me coming out of Alabama. Robinson, I guess he was efficient, but he still looks like he's not trusted, or he's choosing not to throw the ball deep. And that was amplified times 100 against Tennessee.
Yeah.
And he only had 2 drives, and, it's like, part of me feels like, he'd probably do better if he just had some more chances. But at this point, I think Bazelak has proved he's good enough that Robinson probably shouldn't get any more chances. The offense just looks so much more smoother with Bazelak in there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think Bazelak should be the starter going forward. I just wish that, I don't know, I feel like there's always going to be now this thing in the back of my mind, or in the back of the fan base's mind, like, did we give Robinson the full shot here? And if we had seen the same kind of play calling, and like you said, in the Alabama game, it didn't look like the play calling was the issue as much as it looked like Robinson just not willing to pull the trigger on some deeper throws. So, I don't know. This is why I hate not having the for sure guy at quarterback. I'm just going to end up second guessing everything that happens at the quarterback position the rest of the season, unless Bazelak performs. Honestly, it needs to be better than this game moving forward for me to be like, well, everything's fine. All's well that ends well. Yeah.
I think Robinson deserved a different kind of chance than the one he was given. He went out and just, like you just said, it was like they were trying to use him as a running back, and I think that he brings more to the table than he was allowed to show, maybe.
Yeah.
Or at least what it looked like. So I still think,
at least in this Tennessee game, 100%.
And I still think that we will see Robinson. I think they will still play 2 quarterbacks. Maybe not a whole lot, but I definitely don't think we're done with Robinson completely, but maybe we are. I don't know. Should be interesting though.
Yeah, if you are now thinking that you might like reverse the roles and bring Robinson in for a couple or 3 series a game, can we even expect, like, I feel like the defense is just going to assume that every play is going to be a run or a dump off or a screen.
Exactly. That's very possible. Yeah. I know Ole Miss kind of runs 2 quarterbacks, and one of them is definitely a better runner than one of them is like the running quarterback. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it just works. But I don't know. I did not love how they were using Robinson, clearly, and I think that they had like 13 total yards in the first quarter against Tennessee. So just wasn't working out.
And he didn't do anything to help himself out.
No.
He wasn't making any plays despite the play calling.
No.
So that's not a good recipe. There were some key moments in this game that I did want to bring up and see what you thought. How about that targeting call that was eventually overturned? It was early in the game. Jeffcoat, I think. It was like the most perfect hit you can imagine, and I was like, until they overturned it, I was furious, and I just knew that they weren't going to. And I was, what is football in 2020? I was going all the way there.
We're soft now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then thank goodness they overturned it. And
yeah,
man, but that really made me nervous.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was like, well, they never overturn this kind of stuff, and I always feel like 90% of the time they're making the wrong decision or something like that. But it was just refreshing, I guess, to see them get together and make the right decision on that.
That was one play that I wanted to spotlight from the defense. Another was Martez Manuel recovering a fumble, but then that was overturned or negated by a penalty. And on the targeting play, there was should have been an interception on the other end of the throw from JG when he took that hit. And there was 2 plays there. Obviously, one, the targeting didn't happen. So if I think it was Rakestraw, if he catches that, then it's an interception, and Missouri's got the ball in good field position. The other one, Missouri did have the ball in good field position, but an illegal hands to the face negated that fumble recovery. So those were 2 plays there where I was like, man, if those just break slightly different, then Missouri's in business on both of those. And then we still have a little bit more to talk about with Bazelak, but it seemed like Missouri's defense over and over again, whether it was getting stops, getting Tennessee to 4th down, getting these almost turnovers, it seemed like they were right there on the edge of really quieting Tennessee's offense and just couldn't quite get it done.
Yeah, it was just like we talked about earlier, I think it was just unfortunate how many times they were put in that 4th down situation, and they get off the field. If it's like a 4th and 3, I think they get off the field, and they just needed to be a little bit sharper than they were. I think the secondary played okay. I don't think the safeties looked quite as good as they did against Alabama, but it's like we said earlier, you can only do so much when the quarterback has all day to throw, and you got to cover guys for so long. It's harder. Yeah,
of course, when that fumble turned into a penalty, Tennessee just went right down the field and scored a touchdown.
Yeah, it's demoralizing when things like that don't go your way.
Well, I think that was actually the next play. That big run? It
literally was the next play. It was like a 20 or 30-yard run.
Yeah.
Yep.
So less about the quarterback controversy or competition, more just Bazelak's performance in this game. He had a play that stuck out in my mind was a huge 3rd and 10 conversion to Jalen Knox, where he threw a really good pass, and that's a conversion that I don't know if you gave Sean Robinson, with the way the play calling was going, 10 tries at a 3rd and 10. I didn't see anything that had me thinking he was gonna. I was so pessimistic every 3rd down in the Alabama game, and that carried over to this Tennessee game until Bazelak showed, hey, I can actually convert some of these.
Right.
So there's a big 3rd and 10 there. Later in that same drive, it was 3rd and 6, and Jalen Knox dropped, and it would have been right at the sticks, maybe a 1st down, maybe just short, but potentially they go for it if it's like 4th and less than a yard, and they had to settle for a field goal. But there were some plays like that where Bazelak was making the play, and with the second throw to Knox down towards the goal line, it was right around the 10-yard line or so. That play, I feel like that drive should have ended in a touchdown, and there's one later that should have as well, that changes this game if they can get it in the end zone. But Bazelak just making the throws in the big spots, as big as you can get when you're losing to Tennessee. It just seemed like he was ready for it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of what-if moments in this game, and 2 of them were the penalties and stuff that we just talked about, but another one was just what if we finished a couple drives in the red zone. There was a huge interception in the 4th quarter, probably. I think we were down by 2 scores and driving, and things, I didn't think we were going to come back and win the game at that point, but I definitely thought we were about to make it competitive, and so that interception hurt. But overall, I thought Bazelak looked really good. Like you said, he looked very confident in those kind of downs that there's not a lot of hope, a 3rd and long or something like that. He proved that he can make
4th and 1 throw to Christopherson.
Yes. Christopherson's first career catch. Man, what a way to start.
I was kind of panicked. Like when that play started, I was like, oh my gosh,
I know.
what is happening right now?
What are you doing?
Yeah, this play's going nowhere.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of lofts that up there, and he was covered, and he just comes down with it. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Perfectly placed, great catch, and then he ran for another 10 yards or so after he caught it. So that was a nice looking play, considering the tight ends have been lacking so far. That was pleasant to see. But honestly, one thing that would go a long way for Bazelak is the receivers catching the ball. And you mentioned the drop by Knox. He had a couple drops. That just can't continue to happen.
The Jacinto one.
Oh my God!
I mean,
I literally was like, I was freaking out when that happened. I was so. I mean, you couldn't like place the ball more perfectly than where.
If you wanted to get really, really picky, it was kind of like on his back
I guess
hip
it was like a little
bit
bit behind him.
But I mean, I do think he still, even if he catches that ball, he probably gets tackled.
Yeah,
just because he lost his momentum.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I do think that he probably did.
It wasn't a sure thing touchdown, but yeah, I mean that was still like 40-yard play right there at least.
Yeah.
Would have changed things.
Yeah, it would have been huge. But one thing I do love about Bazelak is the touch he puts on the ball. I always thought that was one thing that if Drew Lock struggled with anything, sometimes I thought it was that sometimes he just like threw the ball too hard. It was just like almost looked like it was difficult to catch because it was just like a frozen rope, like throwing it to people and stuff.
I think he got better at that.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like though Lock had like a specific inability with like crossing routes over the middle, where he would just fire it like 500 miles an hour.
Yes.
Like it seemed like he had decent touch. Like I'm imagining like Emmanuel Hall or somebody like streaking down. Ball. Yeah. A decent touch on the long ball. But when it was like a crossing route or even just like a screen pass, sometimes he would just zoom it in there.
I think that's one thing Bazelak does really well is throw a catchable ball.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that gets overlooked, but maybe not catchable enough because the Mizzou wide receivers combined for 9 receptions in this game, with Hazelton, Knox, and Chisholm combining for 9 catches, and I believe they had 5 or 6 drops.
Yeah.
So nearly as many drops as they had receptions from wide receivers. That's pretty ugly.
Yeah, when your top 3 receivers all have at least one just egregious drop, and that's not even counting Jacinto's just...
Yeah, that can't happen. Yeah. So got to finish in the red zone, and the wide receivers and tight ends have to be better. And but I definitely think there's a lot to like, and it's fun watching a new quarterback come in there. It's like an opportunity every play,
right?
And you have a little bit different expectations. So
there was one play where the announcers were specifically talking about Bazelak like keeping cool and like, man, he just like nothing phases him back there. And right the very next play, he like drops the snap and just picks the ball up off the ground and throws it for a first down.
Yeah.
And they're like, I mean, as an announcer, you can't draw it up any better than that for a guy to just
seriously
pull something like that off right after you're done complimenting that aspect of his game.
I love seeing that from him. I mean, that was like wonderful gamesmanship. He
picked it up immediately, eyes downfield.
He knew where the wide receiver was going to be. And Chisholm was ready for it too. Chisholm, that was like a 28-yard pass play. That was like one of the biggest plays of the whole game. It was like a complete accident.
There were 2 pretty big mistakes from Bazelak. One, you alluded to already, the interception. But before we talk more about that, there was a sack that he took where he just, I don't know, that's tough because he was trying to complete a pass. Like all the way up until he was on the ground, he had his eyes downfield trying to make something happen. And I don't know, the play was kind of behind him.
Yeah. And
the defender was coming from behind and just took him out.
Yeah, he's got to be a little bit more aware of the pocket.
But that's going to happen sometimes.
Yeah, that happens to even the best quarterbacks in the NFL sometimes.
The interception, though, was a little bit more, I don't know, I was a little bit more disgusted by that one because they, again, were driving and just like from the second he let go of it, it's like, okay, this is kind of like fluttering in the air a little too long.
Going across the field a little bit.
And the defender was able to step right in and take it. Of course, then that turned into a touchdown on the other end with another 4th and 1 QB sneak.
Yeah.
Tennessee was doing something on those sneaks at least a couple times where JG would come up and they basically, you know how a team will try to draw the other team off sides. Mm-hmm. They would do that and then kind of just quickly really snap it. Like before, they would kind of like fake snap it, take a beat, but it was faster than you would expect when a team's like getting reset for the play. And twice the Missouri defensive line relaxed a little bit after the fake snap, and that's when they snapped it. And he just had like 2 yards both times. Kind of frustrating.
Yeah, also their O-line is pretty good.
True, but
but yes, I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
though. They timed it well.
They were just like kind of being tricky with it, and I was like, okay, you're already good. Like that's just a little unfair.
Did you see some of the players talking about the Tennessee defensive players clapping to mess up the snap count? I saw that
That's illegal.
In an interview, I guess maybe yesterday or a couple days ago, that the Missouri offensive players were saying that the Tennessee players were trying to mess them up with clapping and stuff because that's how they hike the ball. And I guess they were trying to tell the refs about it.
I think that really is a penalty. Yeah.
Is it really?
So, yeah.
I don't know, but obviously the refs didn't call a penalty on that.
Producer Cameron said yes, it is.
Thank you, Producer Cameron. Thank you, Research Department. And is that something that teams could, like future teams that will play, could see and try to use against us, or is that kind of splitting hairs? Or?
If they could, but I think now that that's become public, I think if I were Coach Drinkwitz, I would say, hey, listen, this already happened to us once. Can you be on the lookout for this?
Yeah.
Because another team might try to do this. But I remember there being kind of like a big case of that where a team had to tell the ref, like, this is what they're doing. And it worked a couple of times, but then they got penalized for it. Let's see. Harrison Mevis, he's looking pretty good. After that sack that we talked about from Bazelak, he just booted a 50-yarder. Looked perfect. He had a chip shot earlier. Looked perfect. We got our guy. We got our guy at kicker.
Yeah.
For 4 years, hopefully, maybe 5. How does that? So
don't even ask me. We'll take it for a decade.
Well, 5 years minimum. He's gonna rewrite the record books.
Which you wouldn't like that, so.
Well, it would bother me a little bit.
You'd rather see him go.
I'll take it from the kicker. I'm fine with it. Trey Williams had a tackle for loss. He had a nice play there, and Jeffcoat was in the backfield a couple times with tackles for loss. But other than that, not much going on.
They show some flashes. Isaiah McGuire had a nice sack, but just needs to be more consistent.
All right, let's talk about Larry Roundtree. I think he had a very good game, all things considered. Had a couple big runs. I swear he had 2 runs in this game that were longer runs than he had at a single time all of last season.
I remember that was a pretty hot topic that we had at the beginning of last year was, why are the running backs not breaking any long runs? It felt like 2 years ago Roundtree did that a lot. And, we talked about the offensive line last year, maybe that being an issue. But I agree. This year he's come out. He's looked very strong, and he's breaking tackles. He's looking very agile for being a little bit of a bigger back. So he's really impressed me. Tyler Beatty hasn't done as much on the ground, at least.
He has contributed in the passing game. Obviously had the touchdown in the first game and had a pretty big catch in this one as well. He had a couple catches, I think. I got the stats right in front of me. I could tell you, but
yeah. I think that so far, it's been a really small sample size, but so far in these 2 games, Larry Roundtree looks to me like he could be an NFL player. And I'm not sure I've ever been super sold on that, but this year he looks like he's got the speed and the agility to overcome being a little bit bigger back and run over guys.
Yeah, he's been talked about as kind of like a dark horse NFL running back, NFL caliber running back for the draft by some of the draft analysts, specifically SEC people. Hopefully. I mean, at this point, despite what your disagreements may be, I hope Tennessee is legit, and I hope that they win a bunch of games this year, and we can look back on this and say, well, Tennessee was really good. We didn't know how good they were at the time, but they're solid, and losing to them is not an embarrassment. Yeah,
in the last few years, they've started slow, but they have looked pretty good this year, and I think they will have a pretty good year, unfortunately.
Yeah. I agree that it is unfortunate, but at this point, I'll kind of be rooting for them.
Ooh, I don't know if I can say that.
You don't have to. It's okay. Anything else on this Tennessee game? The very, very end of the game was just kind of that interception, and then Tennessee running the clock out, so there wasn't a whole lot left. But there was that point. I mean, when Missouri was driving, it was 28-12, and I really thought that there was a chance they could cut the lead a little bit, but man, they were so close a couple times, really making it a game, I think.
Yeah.
Next up, LSU. LSU is 1-1. Obviously, we talked about them kind of getting destroyed. Well, their defense got destroyed by Mississippi State in week 1. Then last week they beat Vanderbilt 41-7, and they're now ranked 17th. So they've been kind of jumping around a little bit in the rankings. They went from 6th to 20th, now 17th. I don't know, a win over Vanderbilt. I don't know if that should really move you up in the rankings, but
yeah, they got one of their really good secondary players back in this game against Vanderbilt that was not on the field against Mississippi State. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt are apparently pretty different opponents, so that was clearly a difference on the field for LSU. But yeah. I think they maybe got a reality check in week 1 and said, all right, we got to take care of business.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Miles Brennan, the LSU quarterback, threw for 337 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. As a team, they ran 32 times for 161 yards. That's good for 5 yards per carry. Vanderbilt is not good at football. Of course, they were not good at football last year when they beat Missouri and got Barry Odom fired. So we'll talk about Vanderbilt later on in the season. This time we're talking about LSU. I think it was pretty obvious to me, at least, that they were going to bounce back to some degree after kind of getting hit in the mouth week 1. And as we'll see later, Mississippi State did not have a good week 2. So that kind of made that loss look even weirder for LSU, especially considering they just came out and handled business against Vanderbilt. The game obviously now moved from Baton Rouge to Columbia. In a different year, that might affect things a little bit more, and in a different year, they would probably be at a neutral site, not in Columbia.
Yeah, maybe that was why they were so willing to change locations, is because it doesn't really matter that much, because there's very little crowds in the stadium.
I saw some speculation that they could reschedule the game for November 7th, but LSU always has a bye before the Alabama game, and LSU fans speculated that there's no way they would give up that off week before that game.
Also, there's no way they were playing at 8 o'clock because it would have been a late night for them.
Oh, right. I did hear about that. That was
kind of annoying, but also I guess they're having to go back to like hurricane weather, so maybe it had something to do with traveling in daylight, so I understand, but it was kind of like, oh, of course.
Right. Kyle, is there anything that Missouri can do based on the first 2 weeks of the season? Anything that they can just really, something that you've seen, maybe they've got the potential for, they just haven't quite realized it yet, something they can do to be competitive in this game against LSU?
Honestly, I feel like you could say that about pretty much any unit on the field. I think Bazelak can be better in this game. I think Larry Roundtree could have a nice game. I just would like to see some kind of something we can get excited about on offense, I guess. I think that we feel pretty confident that our defense can be acceptable this season, but the offense is really the question mark, and I think I'd like to see us go out and look good and the wide receivers catch some passes and like score a touchdown. Like it just felt like that was such an incredible task.
Yeah.
Against Tennessee, it was like, oh my God, we can't score a touchdown. We can't just have a drive that goes down and scores. And as simple as that sounds, I would just love to see that happen a few times against LSU.
Yeah, I think the wide receivers kind of stick out in my mind as an area that can improve and absolutely needs to improve for the offense to do anything. Not only just catching the ball, but I don't know, we kind of need to see them catch it to see what they can do after the catch. But we know Jalen Knox is capable of it. I want to see something from Hazelton and Chisholm to kind of show that they are truly the weapons we think they they could be,
Mm-hmm.
because every team in the country has a set of wide receivers that can catch a ball for the most part.
I want to see Coach Drinkwitz navigate a close game. I want to see what happens when we get into the fourth quarter and the game is still undecided. That's something we have not seen yet.
Right. One thing that I did like, though, in both games so far is the fact that he, at least on offense, never stops calling the game. He's not calling it like it's a one-possession game, but he's calling it like there's 2 more quarters to play, all the way until the end. Now, I guess that breaks down a little bit because they went for it on 4th and 15, the last offensive possession of the game against Tennessee. But if you can get my drift, they're not just running the ball, running the clock out once things are pretty much decided. He's still trying things, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think he realizes that the offense just needs reps. I think that he also realizes that they're all in a new scheme and the scheme is complicated and they just need to execute it to get better. And I think he probably knew that they weren't winning the game by the time the third quarter rolled around, and said, let's just get these guys some reps. And I think that's what he's done in both games so far.
Right.
So I agree with you.
You have to do that. I do think there's been other coaches, though, and other coaches right now at different programs that just kind of shut things down in the second half of those type of games.
Let's just get on out of here
Yeah.
and call it a day.
Right. Okay, so the offense improves a little bit. Defense does their thing. Can Missouri make this a game? Give me your thoughts on what kind of outcome we're gonna have in this one.
Yeah, man, LSU has been all over the place, and it's really kind of hard to gauge where they're at. And, Vanderbilt had a pretty decent performance in week 1. So I didn't think they were going to get totally rolled by LSU, but they did. And so if LSU comes out with let's take care of business attitude, then maybe this game isn't very close. But I think that Missouri has the ability to make it pretty close. And the freaking defensive line, man, has to show up. That's probably like the biggest key is if they continue to kind of just be a bunch of dudes, then LSU is going to run for 200 yards on them. And that's how offenses don't get a lot of opportunities, is when the other team just has these long drives that they run the ball the whole time and there's nothing we can do to stop them.
And that's what I've always been afraid of with this start to the season, and with the question marks Missouri has on offense, is they're just going to be in game situations, in the first half where we know, okay, this is no longer a close game where we're really going to see what's going on with this offense.
Yeah.
And they're just, the pressure will be different. And now the pressure at the quarterback position was going to be high no matter what the score was. Both players probably felt like they really needed to perform, or else they'd move on to the next guy.
Yeah. Yeah, Basilak's going to come out and know that this is his job. And
I guess we didn't really, that could technically be a news item that he has been named the starter for the LSU game.
I suppose you're right. I'll say LSU wins this game, but I'll say it's 38-28. And Missouri is somewhat in it in the fourth quarter, entering the fourth quarter.
I like it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I'm actually not going to differ with you at all. I'm going to say that you pretty much got it nailed down there.
Wow.
However, I'm afraid that last score for Missouri is going to be more like garbage time. And instead of LSU pulling away late, it's going to be Missouri trying to claw back into it and scoring late.
Yeah, I hate to, be the one that's settling for mediocrity, but I think that I am just going to be happy like I kind of was after Alabama. I'm going to be happy with the just progress we make. I want to see us improve on the things that we didn't do well last week, and as long as the game is competitive, I think I'll be satisfied. And if it's a game, then that's great. But I think if we get blown out again, it's really demoralizing. I don't want to see that happen.
But there's a blowout that exists that wouldn't make me feel so terrible, like like a 51-38 blowout, and Missouri's offense scores 21 points in the first half, then I'm less worried because at least we know that side of the ball has some life. And
now our defense sucks.
Well, that could easily be written off as a one-time thing more easily than a third no-show in a row from the offense.
Fair point.
So, but obviously that's unlikely considering what we know about this Missouri team.
Mm-hmm.
A blowout is more likely to be
a low-scoring Missouri offense.
Yeah, 41-17 or worse, something like that. All right. It's probably going to be an 0-3 start. Buckle up. Settle in. It's a long season ahead of us. Still a lot of games to be played.
We knew this would probably happen.
Yep.
Nothing has been all that surprising yet.
Yep. We got some manageable games coming up on the schedule.
Yeah. Buckle in and it'll be all right.
Yep. This is year -1 for the Drinkwitz era. It's not even year 0. All right, producer Cameron, you want to give us some games to pick? We're picking the SEC plus Nebraska. Or do they play this week?
Let me check.
It's a Big Ten playing football this year?
Yeah,
yes.
The first game's the 24th for Nebraska.
Oh,
wow.
Hey, you guys did it.
You might have to remind me next week and the week after that until it's actually happening. But in the meantime, we'll just pick the SEC. Can you remind us kind of what happened last week and where we are points-wise?
So going into last week, Kyle had 5 picks, right? Cameron had 4. And then this past week, Kyle picked up 6 points and Cameron picked up 5. So Kyle is in the lead still.
Wow.
11-9.
Unprecedented.
And we both picked an upset last week. We both picked Ole Miss over Tennessee or over Kentucky, which that was an overtime game, but we were right about that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, for some reason I picked Auburn, and obviously they lost to Georgia, and you were just like, yeah, Georgia's gonna win that.
I was watching I don't know, this stupid panel like before the game started on Saturday morning with like Tim Tebow and some other clowns, and they all picked Auburn. But they also all picked Tennessee, and I was like, all right, we'll see.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I hate that so much whenever they're like, I think Tim Tebow literally was like, I got Tennessee in this one. They got a better offense. They got a better defense. And I was like, all right, we'll see about that, Tim. And then like literally he's exactly right. I was like, that sucks.
Yeah.
But they all picked Auburn. They're all wrong.
Me and Tim. Man, that's too bad. All right, what do we got this week?
Alrighty, first up, it is number 4 Florida at Texas A&M. Florida is a 6.5 point favorite. Texas A&M is ranked 21st.
Wow, Florida's good, Kyle.
Florida's really good.
They're gonna
win that game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would definitely take
No 12th man.
Florida cover that.
No 12th man advantage in Texas A&M in College Station.
6.5. You said the spread was? That seems small.
Well, yeah.
A&M's been pretty disappointing.
Yeah. Will they regret
Regress.
hiring? What's his name?
Jimbo
Fisher.
They'll regret having what's his face.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take Florida.
I
And
didn't think of his name. Yeah, I'll take Florida.
What type of person are we talking
That
about? A
quarterback,
coach or?
no, the quarterback kid that
I don't actually know
committed to
him.
Missouri and then
Oh my gosh, James Foster.
James Foster. Yeah, they'll regret having him.
Literally nobody in College Station knows who that is.
Jimbo doesn't even know who he is anymore.
Yeah. All right.
All right, game number 2 is South Carolina at Vanderbilt. South Carolina is a 13-point favorite.
2 0-2 teams.
Who did South Carolina play last week? Do you know? Anybody know?
Yeah, they got beat by Florida.
Okay, they were actually fairly competitive in that game.
South Carolina
in the
gonna
beginning.
win.
Yeah, South
Carolina.
Carolina. Yeah.
Game 3 is number 14 Tennessee at number 3 Georgia. Georgia is a 12-point favorite.
Georgia smoked Auburn.
Yeah, they did. They looked really good. I honestly just don't think Auburn's that great. but like in Auburn standards.
Sure.
I don't think Georgia's that great in Georgia standards.
They're ranked 3rd in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't speak to how good they are, but it's just kind of crazy.
That they're right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm going to be rooting hard for Tennessee in this one. I'll tell you that. I kind of want to pick them just so I can be rooting for that.
I think it'll be a really close game, but I think I'm still going to pick Georgia.
Yeah, I better stick with Georgia. I'm not going to go against them and get burned again.
Alrighty. Game 4 is Arkansas at number 13, Auburn. Auburn is a 14-point favorite.
All right, we got to talk about Arkansas. They beat Mississippi State last week and held them to 14 points. And then everybody comes out of the woodwork saying, oh, Barry Odom, he's got Mike Leach's number.
Well, I tell you what it is. It's Mississippi State's fraudulent. Which means LSU is fraudulent.
Oh.
Which means Vanderbilt is awful.
Yeah.
Which means A&M is awful.
Yeah.
So
what's that tell us about
it means
Auburn? Nothing.
Auburn's not great for Auburn standards, but they're still going to win against Arkansas.
Mississippi State was ranked 16th when they lost to Arkansas. Auburn's ranked 13th.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the rankings are right.
Both road games for Arkansas.
I can't believe Arkansas won last week.
What was the spread last
It was
week?
like
I
they
don't
scored,
remember.
It was
State,
like 18 points. I
Yeah,
swear.
it was big.
Mississippi State scored like what, 14 points or
Yeah.
something? That's insane.
And they scored like, I think,
They threw
700 against.
Yeah, they threw for 600
LSU?
yards
Yeah.
against LSU.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yards, not points. My bad.
Same thing.
I'm going to pick Auburn.
I'll pick Auburn. We don't have enough like close games to like differ on.
We might have one at the end here.
Game 5, number 2, Alabama at Ole Miss.
Alabama.
Alabama is a 24-point favorite.
Give me Bama.
Yeah, I already wrote you down.
Thank you.
And the last game is Mississippi State at Kentucky. Kentucky is a 2.5-point favorite.
Kentucky's at home.
Why
They're
does
0-2.
Kentucky have to be favored?
I'll take Mississippi State.
I'll take Kentucky.
Kentucky will probably win.
Yeah, because Mississippi State sucks.
Well, yeah, we knew that.
Well, yeah. Oh, so you agree with me?
No. Their passing offense, you're not even gonna believe what they're gonna do. So the only difference we have is this Mississippi State Kentucky game.
Yep, there
Prime
will
time.
only be a 1-point swing next week.
Well, I got some work to do, but I'll start catching up.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
1 or 2-point swing.
Yeah, I'm gonna catch up in a hurry. Actually,
Yeah, if he's
Rome was built in a
he's
day. I
right,
guess.
it's tied. So
everything we just said, forget it all. Yeah, actually, it's the opposite. All right, I think that's it for this week.
Go Tigers.
Oh yeah, that's not your official outro.
Oh, all right. Guys, you can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Missouri Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
you can
Oh my gosh!
man.
You can watch us on YouTube. What do you want?
you can get T-shirts and stickers at MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Yes, you can.
And thanks to those who made some purchases this week. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we do. And you can see us on YouTube. And thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week.